everybody. Welcome once again to the Road to the ProcureTech Cup, the show that's all about showing you, procurement professionals, the art of the possible with procurement technology. Got quite the show for you today. We've got BeNeering on the show, who's going to talk to us about how we should think about building deployment plans for intake and orchestration solutions, which is a hot topic these days. So it should be a great show. It's episode 14, so we're well on our way here. And just to give you a sense of where we're at in the season here, January 23rd. So thank you for joining us. And we've got BeNeering. We had a couple shows with Conversion IS and Fair Market to kick off 2026. And we've got all of the replays on the Pure Procurement newsletter YouTube channel. If you want to check those out, you can also check them via my profile on LinkedIn, whatever you prefer. And we've got a number of shows slated every Friday until April. And then at the end of April, April 22nd to 24th, we've got the ProcureTech Unpacked virtual conference. So this is the first edition of this yearly conference. So last year we had the ProcureTech Cup event on LinkedIn. We'll be running something similar, but no eliminations this year, right? No big tournament. It's more of a solution discovery exercise. And for those of you that want to dig in deeper, we will have this virtual conference, right? So wherever you're at in the world, if you want to tune in from 9 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern time daily, on April 22nd to 24th. We're going to have little peer groups where if you're in pharma, you're going to be with folks from pharma. If you're in manufacturing, with folks from manufacturing, and giving you a breakout group, a team, right, to explore everything we have in terms of different solution categories that will be represented by the solution champs that are on the show this year. So it's really about same thing as the show, showing you the art of the possible, giving you demos and connecting you with folks that can tell you how to navigate solution categories. There'll be a few keynotes. We'll run the ProcureTech Cup finals as well. And if you want to attend, scan this QR code here, fill out the quick form. There's a couple of questions. I want to make sure that everybody who's coming, well, first of all, there's very limited spots, right? I think we're aiming max 50, 60 people. And then it's already filling up fast. I already sold a dozen tickets so far. And so it's a first come, first serve basis, as long as you have a profile where it's going to be useful to you. And I want to make sure that everybody gets a lot of value out of the event. So that's my little sales pitch for you at the top of the show here. But the agenda for the show itself is, let's just make sure we're talking about the same thing around intake and orchestration solutions. What is it? How do we define it with our guests? And then how do we get to building deployment plans for these types of solutions? So how do we do our homework and ensure we're ready? Do we choose between MVP or minimum viable scope per project or big bang for these types of solutions, and why? And then what do we need to think about from a change management standpoint? So for regular viewers of the show, you'll see that we touch on the similar themes, but there are always little particularities to different solution categories that are very important to keep in mind. So that being said, let me bring on Natalia Parmenova. I hope I'm saying that right. Chief Revenue Officer at BeNeering. How's it going, Natalia?
Hello. Everything is cool. Let's go, because we always have more things to talk about than time. So
that's right. That's right. I always say to Natalia, she's my SAP pain point confidant. And so we always have more stories and more things to talk about than time to do it. So let's get to it here. So let's just define things before we get into the meat of the discussion. What is an intake and orchestration solution as viewed through our Pure Procurement market map? So essentially, I see it as the glue, right, or the needle and thread that allows me to take all of the requests, the different types of requests that could be coming into procurement, triage them in the best way possible based on our business rules, and then orchestrate the resolution of those requests, whether it's sending people directly to a purchase order, whether it's sending them to a catalog, sending them to sourcing, right, and connect with a category manager, weave a sourcing event through IT and cybersecurity and legal and all our other stakeholders in procurement. So that's why it's in the middle, and you've got arrows pointing to the other functional areas that are usually supported by technology. So that's how I kind of see it. I don't know, Natalia, does that align with your definition as well?
We can say so. I'm not a big fan of definitions. I'm more a fan of substance. For me, however you call it, intake, P2P, operational purchasing, guided buying, e-procurement, it's all about the same. It's a set of scenarios and applications that have a requestor in the center. So non-professional employee of the company, super diversified in terms of what they're doing as a main job. And these are the people for this main job requiring something, goods or services. And on one side, it has to be super efficient and easy for them. On the other side, it has to be organized in a way that procurement also does not have more work. And that's what for me is intake, however you call it.
Yeah. And we've had this discussion offline where I've also kind of seeing, I call it the great convergence, right? Where we see source to pay suites that traditionally have hung out in the top quadrant start to put out intake and orchestration functionality. And then the intake and orchestration functionality people starting to put out SRM and sourcing functionality, et cetera. So I think to your point, right, these terms are also changing over time. And so it's always super useful to come back to what is it we're trying to solve here as a problem instead of looking at it firstly through technology. So I always appreciate that perspective. And before we get into the meat of the discussion here, can you give us just a quick overview again on who BeNeering is? Because I know you've been on the show before, but for folks who are watching for the first time.
Yeah, sure. Just super quickly. So this is the universe of issues, topics, problems that BeNeering guided by, and again, that's how we call the solution, is addressing. And for this show, I call this slide intake challenges. Again, but leaving terminology aside, what do we see in operational procurement? We see the variety of internal customers. We see huge diversity of different requirements. We see multitude of buying channels that are being used to address this high diversity. We see that in companies, for the most part, purchasing policies are relatively complex, right? As much as people try to simplify, but there are a lot of compliance rules, government rules, company rules. And there is also this small elephant with a funny shape in the corner. As much as I see in some of the LinkedIn posts and exchanges that ERP is dead, ERP is not needed, as long as there are tax authorities, as long as there is stock exchange, I doubt very much that it's possible. And it's important, in especially in operational procurement projects, to recognize that for companies, whether they're small or big, ERP is a single point of truth, and this is a imperative, and it's much more efficient and much cheaper at the end of the day to recognize it and to take it into account. So this is the universe in which we operate.
Yeah, and I find it funny that you call them the small elephant. I would think they're a pretty big one, but but I agree, right? Like ERP is not going anywhere because to me it represents the integration with the other functions of the business, especially finance. To your point around markets and regulation, so yeah, it definitely connects with me what you're the universe of problem as you term it.
So moving to how we are addressing this topic, this is a little bit of a representation how we see the world. So BeNeering is a front end for requesters. We take a challenge very, very successfully to make sure that all requesters in the company have only one entry point for anything they need, from super simple buying channels like supplier catalogs to very complex buying channels like, for example, investment requests or complex operational contracts or stock. So basically we are claiming and we are successfully delivering one entry point no matter however complex the buying channel is. And the second important thing is that we are always trying to gently lead the requester first of all to the standard buying channels, because that's what basically procurement wants. They are negotiating catalogs, they're negotiating contracts, and they want requesters, first of all, to leverage what is already pre-negotiated. So our universal engine actually is AI-based for 6 years already, and it's first of all trying to accommodate to standard bind channels, and only when nothing is found in standard channels, it's also possible to address PO or invoice history to create quasi free text, but based on some historical data. And therefore, for many of our customers, pure free text requests is actually a fraction of the total spend. And then users are easily operating in our environments. They're being suggested data, so they're easily filling in requests. And the minute they push the button, create a shopping cart, there is instant creation of a document in SAP. So basically, we are connected to SAP in real time, and real time. We are not replicating any data, so we are sending data to SAP and receiving data in real time. And then if we move to the next slide, the whole process, obviously for everybody, is continuing in SAP. So basically PR, PO, delivery, invoice, but the requester continues to work always in BeNeering, whether for the status check, which is on the screen, or for delivery confirmation, whether it's service delivery or goods delivery. And that's how we encompass this problematic of intake and orchestration at the same time, leveraging a lot what the company already has in SAP, because most of orchestration is happening and it's already there. So reuse is a big value what we deliver to customers.
And I love, I'll just stress on the fact that you said real-time integration, because I know there's a ton of solutions that have connectors for SAP or for the back-end ERPs, but they recopy data, right? And that you end up having two kitchens in your house, right? And you go, oh, where did I leave the spatula? And it becomes very complex to manage, and you have data sync issues, that sort of thing, right? And so I think that's a very key thing for folks to look at when they're looking at not just intake and orchestration, but any solution that you're bolting on top of an ERP is it actually real time, or is it copying data and then creating potentially unsync issues, right? Or desynchronization issues.
Exactly.
And I think you already covered this, Natalia, to a point, right? But like at the end of the day, whether you call it intake and orchestration is not the point, right?
No.
And so it's all about, whether you call it e-procurement, procure to pay, guided buying, intake, right? These are, we could get tripped up in the definitions, but it's all about giving requesters the self-service power to get to the end of their process as fast as possible, and have the visibility over what they need to do and or who they need to wait on in which order to get to buying their goods or service that they need.
Exactly.
And so, so that's, BeNeering in a nutshell. And, I'll just say hi to folks that are in the chat here. I always ask, where you're watching from, and it's always such an international show. So we've got Moreno from Italy. We've got Joe from Pittsburgh, Michelle from Atlanta, Georgia, Panos from France. So thank you very much for tuning in and for saying hi. We really appreciate it. And if you do have any questions for Natalia or for myself as we go through the show, you can also put them in the chat on LinkedIn or on YouTube. And I get them as we're doing the show live, so I can answer stuff or ask Natalia to answer stuff while we're going here. So that's a feature of being in this live show. But without further ado, so let's get into the topic here, right? For these types of solutions that we just outlined, how should we be thinking about how to deploy them in our businesses?
So when we were preparing for the show, Jael, I was thinking that I would avoid basic project planning and the project methodology tips. Let's assume that everybody knows how projects are run, and we will focus only on the things that I feel kind of lessons from our customers, from the deployments that we are doing with customers, more pragmatic tips and tricks. And to start, as funny as it is, I still see some projects where the real objectives are not super defined, and whether it's intake or orchestration or AI or whatever other stuff, companies should not deploy it just for the fun of it, right? To just say, okay, we are using intake. I think it's very important to thoroughly reflect what's wrong with today's situation. So what is wrong with the request alive? Is it the duration of the request completion? Is it the quality of the information they're submitting to procurement? Is it the fact that they're just running out and buying stuff left and right without purchase orders? What is the problem in procurement? Too many colleagues that are answering always the same questions. So basically, to reflect a little bit on the real objectives, interviewing the requesters, interviewing procurement, and trying to really get to the bottom of it. The second topic, I think, is a story of the business case, and we discussed it with Ujael in the last episode. I do, just to quickly repeat, I do honestly believe that a true business case should cover not only high-level KPIs, savings, TCO, whatever, but decompose it into the value drivers and into functional drivers and into maybe even technical drivers. Because we used with you last time this analogy of the fitness, right? And if a fat person goes to fitness and loses 10 kilos, or a slim person goes and loses 1 kilo, the 1 kilo might be more relevant than the 10 kilos, right? So you really need to understand your situation and dig a little bit deeper beyond just the one big number. You can, dear listeners, you can rewatch this episode from last year. And how to select the best fit solution. I think it's one of the problems today in the procurement solution space, that there are too many of them, of us. We are just now working with a customer from one of the Scandinavian countries, and they started by making a market research with 40 solutions. 40. And I always use these stupid analogies, like choosing between 40 men, for me, between 40 houses, between 40 whatever. This is beyond the human brain.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to have a good methodology how you are selecting, and here bringing people from different departments, IT, procurement, process excellence, finance. And we had recently a couple of super example where the companies apply methodologies they use for their core business sourcing to IT. So if anybody is interested, I would be happy to share. And the last point, even before you start the project, I think this is something like a real pain point, is the story with the TCO. In many cases, I see that even like within selection process, people kind of forget about all possible additional costs. So they ask us, okay, what's your subscription? What's your implementation? But is this really all? Would you need to invest into data cleaning? Would you need, not in our case, thanks God, but in other solutions, would you need to invest into middleware? Would you need to develop integration? Will you have to support integration? So you need to consider all this. It's a bit like when you are buying a house, you have to check not only that it's a nice house, but maybe to see the roof, to see the basement. Otherwise, you pay something for the house, and then you have to go into your family pocket and get more money. And I think in some cases, it can become even like a double or triple of what you invest in a solution. So these are the key aspects that I would kind of think about before even starting the project.
Yep. No, that's a great point, right? Your property taxes, the whole picture, right? And to that earlier point around the objectives, I think people go, yeah, the objectives, of course, right? But when you're looking for, if you're going out and looking at 40 solutions, it's probably because your objective is not well defined, right? To me, like you're still in RFI and research mode, because once and you're getting a sense for the art of the possible, which was what, for example, this show is about. But once you're clear on those objectives, you should be able to pare down very quickly and say, if I find 3 or 4 solutions that will help me do what I want to do at a price that makes sense, and we're not chasing the best solution because that's an exercise in perfectionism. We're chasing a solution, a partner that's going to enable us the capabilities that we need. I think that's the best way to like flip the thinking about it once you're actually looking at execution. But yeah, and that's part of doing the homework, I think, right?
Exactly. So moving on, a couple of reflections also in the area of preparation. Did you do your homework in procurement for being able to really benefit from intake? Because essentially, if there are no structuring within the spend and there is no understanding what we want to buy through which buying channel, and there is no sourcing strategies for different categories, intake becomes basically a mail server, structured mail server, right? So it's really, really important if you want to benefit from intake, meaning have as much as possible done by requesters in a self-service mode without necessity to push buttons for procurement. It's important to understand within your total spend how much is in a structured buying channel. So did you define supplier catalogs? Did you define categories that requesters could buy via marketplace? Did you define also the thresholds? Do you have a service and different frame contracts? Is there things that you could buy on stock so that people can reserve it and order directly? So the more the structured buying channels are defined, the better will be impact of intake, especially for procurement routine work. So the more standard buying channels there are, the more requesters will be doing self-services.
Yeah, and there's actually a question in the chat which landed at the exact time you were going over this section, and I think you're answering it, which is, this seems like a solution for a mature organization, or at least quite sensible to how bad workflows impact the final outcome. And to me, this is it doesn't necessarily have to be a really mature organization, but you do have to put the homework in to say, okay, like what's our spend profile? Like how many spend categories do we want to cut that up into? And then how do we want to map, where we're sending that from a purchasing channel perspective, right? If it's office supplies, we spend X amount. We have 3 providers and they're all on catalog, right? That's how that would pan out with one of your solutions. But then you do the same thing for each spend category that you have: facilities, MRO parts, industrial supplies, professional services, and you ask yourself, like, what are the if it's a Plinko machine and you drop the ball at the top, what's the decision tree to get to an order based on your current maturity and your current strategies? And this can also evolve over time, right?
Exactly. We just to complement what you're saying, we do have customers that are extremely mature in their category strategies, like Deutsche Telekom, like BASF. But we also have customers who are coming, for instance, from acquisitions, right, or mergers, and still need to develop buying channels. In this case, I think we will be maybe talking about it a bit later, but let's mention now, it's also possible to start with a few categories from the extremes. So put in the intake content from a supplier catalogs that you already have, and have everything else as a free text, but then slowly analyzing the coming free text, start narrowing it down by negotiating certain contracts, for example, or deciding that this category we can allow people to buy through a marketplace. So basically starting with a big chunk of free text and then kind of eating out of it and putting this into standard buying channels.
Yep. No, I love it, and I see time flying here. So I know you had that second point around, the integration into the backend ERP and the seamless to the end of the process. But I think we've kind of covered that one. So I'd go to this next topic if you're okay around
Yeah.
thinking around, you know, and I think you just outlaid an example, right, of what's my minimum viable product. I'm super immature. Maybe it's just, to your point, getting all the free text in and then chunking it out based on characteristics, or big bang. And I'd love to get your thoughts on how you think about, how do you scope those initial deployments?
It really depends on a customer. I mean, there is no one size that fits all. What I just mentioned, mature customers that are coming, for example, to us from SRM, so those that used already previous, not really intake. Well, actually, it is intake, just was
Yeah.
called differently, right? So mature customers, they are deploying everything together by division or by country. The companies that still have a bit of homework to do in terms of structuring buying channels, what I mentioned, they start by having a few catalogs and a lot of free text, and then sorting out the free text into different buying channels with the time. I think what is important is to keep this ultimate goal in mind. We are not going to talk today about adoption, but the ultimate goal is that your requesters have one entry point for all requests, not that they have a couple of types of requisitions in intake, but for instance, for plant maintenance, they still have to go to SAP.
Yeah.
Or for investment requests, they still have to log into SAP. So the idea is that you have this target, one entry point for requester, no matter what they want. And you can start with these simple extremes and slowly sort it out into more complex channels.
And your point number two, I find, is so important because to me it informs the first iterations, right? Because I go, okay, we have to develop a solution from a functional perspective, like everything you have on the right hand side of your slide. We want to support all those channels based on the categories. Maybe we don't have them today, so I want to start with maybe a smaller user group. But I want, when I start with a user group, to get that number two, right? To give them one entry point for everything that they're going to do. And if that means we're going to handle a lot more complexity in the back end as procurement because of that, well, maybe we reduce the scope from a user standpoint so that we can get the definition of the other channels based on the data that's going to come in, and we can get a mature solution with that smaller user group before deploying to bigger sites. Whereas to your other example, maybe I already have all my channels and it's just a matter of centralizing them, and I can deploy the users much faster to reach that single entry point, right? So I love having that end vision of number two in mind when you're thinking about intake. And last little topic here, and I know we'll cover it on the third show together as well, Natalia, right? Change management. But what are the things you want to leave people with on this topic here?
Yeah, change management is very important. That's it, basically, right? Now, how companies are taking it and how much they are doing, it's a question. Couple of tips, because again, we will be talking about it more thoroughly separately. But I think you have to always be ready to answer the question of the requesters, how my life will be better with a new tool. That's as simple as that, right? I mean, of course, there is a nice and imposing answer. Well, you just do what we tell you. But unfortunately, in the modern world or in general, it just doesn't work like this. People will find other ways. They will be coming to your office. They will be sending mails. They will say, "Oh, I forgot." So basically, this is really, really important to have this answer thoroughly ready. Coming back to my first point, what is your problem, right?
Yeah.
And essentially, finding answer on this question should be in the very beginning. And for this, all kinds of tips and tricks which we can discuss in the next session. And the second point is I think it's completely normal already, but sometimes maybe still underestimated that users can and should be taken along on a journey. So basically, doing the prototypes together with them. For instance, things like the project team should really become a requester themselves. So basically, eat their own food or wear their own shoes. And why not to make big boys, so the sponsors as first users? So
Yeah.
this is
And what
quickly.
and one discussion I had recently that made me think about this differently is like, usually you have a project team and everybody else feels like they're getting the project deliverables given to them, right? Like they implemented a new system that I now have to use. And I think the mindset shift is like, how do I get, like, this is a team wide or company wide project, right? For everybody, like from the start, right? So everybody feels like they're in the project in some way, shape, or form. And it's not some other team or some other project team delivering something and now I have to use it or I have to get trained on it, but I feel invested right from the beginning, in some way, shape, or form, right, as I'm implementing the project, right? And so how can we do that at scale, as much as possible? I think, and take the training outcome and the convincing outcome forward and shift it left, so to speak, in the project plan, so that you have people on board right from the get-go. All right, cool. Well, we had another slide here on AI, but we'll keep it as a tease for next episode here with Natalia from BeNeering. So for everybody who's watching online, really I want to thank you for tuning in live. If you're watching the replay, I thank you as well. If you want to keep getting the invitations for the weekly show here and the replays, you have the Pure Procurement newsletter that you can scan on the left-hand side. I also share articles on best practices, trends, things that people should be thinking about if you're interested in procurement technology. And I know, Natalia, you prepared a little something for the audience as well, correct?
Yep. So you can download some of our use cases and think about them from the
All right, cool.
perspective of what we were discussing today.
Yeah, and I think it's also trying to find case studies of organizations that resemble your own and getting a sense for how they approach the problem, how they solved it in their organizations, and potentially getting a referral, right? Making some new friends, Natalia. It's always good. So everybody who's on the call, thank you so much for tuning in. Natalia, thanks so much for taking your Friday evening with us. I really appreciate it. And
No
I'll
problem.
let you get to your weekend here, and we'll see everybody else next week. So thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.